Welcome to Inside the 18, live from United Soccer Coaches Convention in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm Michael Magid. With me is Pro GK Academy's Omar Zini.
Back again, yes.
Back again for day two. And we are joined today by DC United Academy goalkeeper Jack Stefanowski. Actually, I just said Academy goalkeeper as if you're like in the academy right now. Which, and if people were like watching that right now, they'd be like, ooh. Man, I don't know about that. I think there's some faking going on with that birth certificate right over there. So, but no, Jack Stefanowski from the DC United Academy. Thanks for being on Inside the 18, man. This is going to be awesome. We're really excited to have you, dude. When you sent us the whole rundown for what you wanted to do today, I was like, this is the most comprehensive thing I've ever seen before in my life. He sent like a 4-page dissertation on what we were going to talk about. First off, guys, before we get into today's episode, just want to remind everybody to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast. We're up to 265. Is that what it is? That right?
Unless no one's reviewed since yesterday, so I don't think anybody has. Yeah,
you know what? Maybe somebody at the convention has reviewed since yesterday, domestically and worldwide. So thank you again for all that support, everybody, guys. Again, please keep reviewing. I am doing terrible with this today. Again, please keep rating, reviewing, and subscribing on all platforms. I'm going to take that one more time. Again, please, you take it one more time. Here we go. All right. I'm just going to start this whole thing all over again here. Here we go.
Oh, jeez.
Again, please keep rating, reviewing, and subscribing on all platforms. Make sure to leave your Instagram or Twitter handle in the body so we can send you your prize. A lot of you are leaving your Apple Podcast sign-in like we talked about yesterday, and we have no idea who that is, so we can't find you. We've had some people, though, they go like, at Taylor13. I'm like, dude, I know who you are now. You're Taylor13 on Instagram. I can find you. This is going to be very, very simple for us to send you your prize. So that's a great way to do it. Also, guys, that's how people find us. Like, the more reviews we get, the more goalkeepers we reach, the more stories we can share and learn from one another. So I want to share a review right now. This one comes from somebody we might be familiar with, and it just goes, great podcast, ! 5 stars. Excellent podcast, excellent themes, great guests, and great hosts from Alone and Insane via Apple Podcasts in Mexico.
Thank you.
Right there. Shout out to Eugenio Monroy for doing that. He'd left a review as himself before in the past, and he probably listened to one lately where I was like, hey guys, we just want to keep making sure we're getting those reviews. He's like, oh, you know what? I just saw them last night. I'm going to leave a review. Because I just saw this review. It's amazing. This is fantastic. So thanks, guys. That's a very simple way to leave a review right there, so we love that. Let's get into some listener questions real quickly, guys. This one comes from somebody that Jack might be familiar with. This is an insider known as Anthony Maceda. I think we might know him as well, too. He might be to the left-hand side of me currently right now working the Mevo camera. And he goes, what is Loudoun United's method of goalkeeping? Well, this question is clearly for me. Obviously, it's for me. So I'm going to answer this right here. Actually, Omar, are you going to answer that? Or
no, I'm going to pass. I'm going to defer.
You're going to give that maybe to the guy wearing the DC United the jersey right here. So, Jack, why don't you answer that? What is Loudoun United's method of goalkeeping?
Yeah, so the first thing we want to look at is what kind of keeper do you want that going from the academy into the pros. So, the way I begin with is, what needs to happen at the pro level is to win games. So, our role is to develop that confident keeper that once he goes to the next level, he can go out and win games. Obviously, there's a lot more details behind it. So what we look at first is the personality aspect, because that's going to carry a lot of weight in terms of what they do in terms of competitions, and then how they develop as goalkeepers.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way that you just put that. You just put it a very succinct way, because it really leads right into our topic today, which is what you had actually suggested to me, and I was like, this is honestly the best suggestion I've ever gotten about it. You said, what was it? The comprehensive setup of a collaboration to develop the goalkeeper genius? Is that what you had said?
Yeah.
Which I was like, can we just shorten that to developing a goalkeeper genius? That might be an easier way to go about it. So today's topic is developing the goalkeeper genius. We're going to talk about all the different facets that create the goalkeeper genius. So, Jack, first off, since this is a terminology that I think you're familiar with, since you're the one that literally came up with it, to me at least, what is the goalkeeper genius?
Yeah, so this is just more on an intrinsic level. To be successful, and we touched on the personality, a genius is someone that very passionate about what they do, and with that passion, they're gonna highlight their strengths. So for me, every individual, as a goalkeeper, they'll have their strengths and their weaknesses. The question is, can they take that passion into goalkeeping and then highlight it with their strength, and take it to the next level, and at the same time continue to work on their weaknesses. So I think when you talk about collaboration and comprehensive setup, that becomes the practical part of how we get an individual, whether it's a kid or an older keeper that has a dream of playing at the professional level. So we've tapped into the intrinsic side, and then now what can we do from the practical side to help them get there?
So I want to ask a goalkeeper genius to right over here. I was just looking at Omar because Omar is a goalkeeping genius, honestly.
No, I wouldn't say I'm a goalkeeping genius. I just love it so much, and I think that us as coaches, when we obviously, if you dedicate your life's work to goalkeeping, I would say that you said this ability to kind of really go into it without understanding, like the financial compensation sometimes may not be there, and that's how it is in anything you may love, unless you're like a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. But there's certain things that you do because you love it, and I think for us as goalkeeper coaches, I think we do it because we love it, and the DNA that we have and that's inside of us, and it's, the reason why we do this is kind of what we're looking for. I think I personally like to work with goalkeepers that are dedicated and love the position just as much as I do. Whether we talk about, which goalkeepers are going for England to the Euros, and that means you have to know everything about Nick Pope. We got Dean Henderson, about Jordan Pickford, their recent form, Fraser Forster at Celtic. You know what I'm saying? So you know all these little things about it, and when I have a conversation with somebody and that comes up, I'm like, okay, this person gets it. You know what I mean? So I think to me, that's what a goalkeeping genius is about for me, is somebody who lives, breathes it. Of course, you take some time off because it's crazy if you get all, do it 24/7. But somebody that's not just in it for the Saturday, Sunday games, but the whole process.
I consider it also the goalkeeping IQ, the intellect of the goalkeeper.
Sure,
yeah. Because the thing is that there's a certain intellect that you need to have in order to be able to play the position. I mean, Jack, I'm sure you've discussed this plenty of times. How much of the training is actually from a mental standpoint as opposed to the physical standpoint?
Yeah. So that's why it's important to have a comprehensive setup, because what are we doing to help that goalkeeper develop the tactical IQ? So you get that 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old that you can just see the passion that kid has for goalkeeping. And because the tactical IQ does take a long time to develop over the years, can we start to sprinkle some simple tactical principles at a younger age, so that then they're successful as we look further down the road.
So what are some of these characteristics of the goalkeeper genius? Obviously, I'm sure, I fit the complete profile of the goalkeeper genius. As we look at me right now, you go, this is, when I look at the prototype goalkeeper, I say, that guy right there, he's got everything. He's got the genius, he's got the body, everything.
I mean, I would just like to preface that. I just feel, for me personally, growing up, it was all about we always heard about, that guy's 6'3", 6'4". So the physical attributes were very much the first thing that I would look at as a competitor, as somebody who would say, Jack is 6'3", 6'4". Wow, okay, he must be really good. But then obviously now as a coach, you start realizing height isn't everything, and it's way, way more about the IQ. What kind of learner are they? How much can they retain per session? Are they actually retaining and getting better per session? So I think that is what I would preface for me, what I look for. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think the big part of it is the personality and the passion that's going to separate. So you're going to have, say, a young kid at 13 that just shows up maybe 3 times a week, for team goalkeeper training. And then you have the other 13-year-old that's nonstop. He's thinking about goalkeeping in his house with his little brother. He's reading books on goalkeeping. And just because he just can't stop thinking about it. So I think because of the passion and the energy that you put into it, create that deep genius because of how much exposure you get to it. And then same thing at the pro level. Are you just happy, showing up to team training and getting your reps with the goalkeeper coach, or are you willing to go apart from the team training and do the video sessions on your own and just allow yourself to be successful, at the next level. So at pro level, are you comfortable understanding 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 3-4-3, and then because of that knowledge, allow your team to win the game. So it's not just about, shot stopping. Yes, those are important facets. Yeah, you want to get your shutout, which is one of the criteria, you get judged on. Okay, but more importantly, what can you do in real time in a game to help your team win the game?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you just brought up in regards to it's not just about the shot stopping. It's about understanding from an intrinsic standpoint, as you were saying, as the game. Because how often have you been able to develop somebody to understand the basics of shot stopping and angle play, yet you throw them in the game and I mean, my gosh, you'd be better off throwing up, one of these random people just walking down the stairs right now at the convention center. Well, actually, the next person's probably like a former MLS keeper, so that might not have been like the best choice, to use. But I mean, you'd be better off, throwing John Hollinger, into the goal right there. Former pro over in Sweden, right over there, who just happens to be sitting there as our audience of one as people walk by. And by the way, that is like just totally throwing me off. Is that like John's just such a good-looking dude, and he's sitting there, and I was like, there's no way this dude is here to listen to this goalkeeping podcast. And sure enough, guy's here to listen to this goalkeeping podcast. So let's talk about the variables that lead to the genius, okay? From that mental standpoint, what are these variables, and how can we teach this?
Yeah, so I think one of the things you'll get like keepers that might, one of their strengths is the physical aspect, but then they'll struggle playing games. So for me, I think it's a lot of exposure to playing games, whether at the young level or the pro level, because you want to be able to compete on a daily basis. So one of the things I incorporate a lot is just a ton of games, just because that's what you need to be good at, and can you develop that winning behavior.
Do you think that's no? Go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, do you think that's something that's missing? Because Omar and I've actually had this discussion before. Is that missing in a lot of training sessions is that game element?
Yeah, and so one of the things I'll do, and it just sounds very simple, is like say a soccer tennis game. So at first glance you're like, oh, it's just a fun game, but where you're just hitting balls over the net, but you can make it you can get a lot more from it by introducing like tactics into it and fitness and 1v1, 2v2, where you're getting them to use their brain to actually go and win the game. Can you come up with a strategy, even a simple game like that, and then connecting that to like 11v11 in a team environment?
I really hope that they are able to use those skills they learned in soccer tennis in their distribution skills. So I just want to see these kids, just all the DC United kids are just lobbing these balls, and it's like because Jack has us doing the soccer tennis team, and just actually crushing it because of it. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's like you're saying, it's kind of like that development of personality, and you said being able to strategize when you're either losing in soccer tennis or, let's say, for example, a crossing game, like being able to under pressure make the right decisions. And I think that is like, even as a personality standpoint, for example, like sometimes when I'm on a podcast, I'll realize that I'm being too wordy or I'll say too much stuff. And then when I do like an interview with somebody else, then I'm like, okay, well, all that experience from like a non-formal podcast or like an Instagram live that I've done with people who are asking me questions, I realize, wow, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so wordy, be more concise, get to my point. So it's just that experience. It may not be an actual interview, but when I step into an interview, then I'm able to pick off those little notes that I gave myself from something that was not specifically an interview, but something very similar. So these games, they still have the underlying layer of just like that competitiveness and competition, but also strategy, personality, developing proper habits to kind of bounce back from mistakes, things like that. So it's just a little personal development stuff that you're kind of honing in on without really saying this is what we're going to work on. It kind of just comes out naturally. And I think as a coach, personally, I've gotten a lot better of just letting things happen a little bit more naturally instead of trying to script everything.
That's, I think, one of the hardest things as a coach is to not try to micromanage the session. And you're talking about playing games and stuff like that. Like, that allows you to not be able to micromanage because it's the game has rules, and you just let the rules play out, type of a thing, and you let them problem solve on their own, right?
I'm going to ask you a quick question. I think because you train younger goalkeepers, obviously, right? From the U9 up until the U19s.
I'm U9 up until the pro level. Yeah.
Okay, so do you feel like obviously the little things that you're instilling in the younger kids is kind of obviously that competition aspect, but making sure that they are able to problem solve for themselves. So I'm sure you're doing that in the early stages, but the goalkeepers that you didn't get in their early stages, who are probably now 16, 17, or the pro guys that are coming into Loudoun, do you feel like you can tell which goalkeepers have had those coaches that have drilled in those little things?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just tell by the body language, the way they walk, like, you get that rigid, straight line goalkeeper, where everything is like one-dimensional versus, a keeper that moves really well and he's multi-dimensional just because he's got a lot of stimulation and exposure from the game. So
this is the goalkeeper genius you created, right?
So, and that's why it's important, even at a young age, they're playing on the field, they're playing game, they're getting that stimulation.
So, yeah, absolutely.
So you were talking to me a little bit about a comprehensive setup, and a lot of our listeners that are listening to that, our parents, or sometimes team coaches who may not be familiar necessarily with the goalkeeping side as well as us goalkeeping nerds here. So why don't you explain the comprehensive setup of your goalkeeper development program? Yeah.
So we spoke about the decision making, the tactical aspect, which takes a long time to develop. I feel like there's a disconnect sometimes just from, the goalkeeper coach, trainer, and then the head coach in actually designing sessions to recreate the scenarios in a game. So you may have a game on the weekend, and the first thing the keeper's thinking about is the goals he's conceded. So when you come in early that next week, as a goalkeeper coach, obviously you're going to design the technical piece and then also the situation from that game in the training session. But once we get to that last part, where there's the third or fourth part where, it's team-based training, you may have worked on crosses for the first part of it, and then you get to the last part, and it's like shot stopping. And if you do get a cross, it happened by accident as opposed to being planned. So part of the comprehensive setup is the communication. How can the head coach facilitate the decision making, of the goalkeeper, because he's put in a realistic game environment. So there's a difference between me hitting balls and repetition of the technical skills of actually going to catch a ball, but that's different when you put 10, 15 guys inside the 18-yard box, and then now you're under pressure mentally. Can they repeat those scenarios and be successful?
For sure. Yeah, it's sometimes tough, obviously, especially in college, where the drills, we all know as goalkeepers, we've been in goal where the coaches say, hey, this drill's not for you. And sometimes our goalkeepers get antsy and like, hey, we know where this cross is going, so they're cheating. And it's like, well, we're working on the forwards today, not you. So it's difficult. And I did a recent session where I did cutbacks, and I was asking my goalkeepers to hit one-touch finishes. And some of them got frustrated because you get in probably for 10 reps, and like 2 or 3 are actually on target, because it's just not – it's kind of hard. It's kind of difficult sometimes to create an environment that everybody can flourish in, just because those one-touch finishes aren't a goalkeeper's forte. And obviously being in a team setting sometimes, we only have – such a small window of training opportunity, especially in college, where, hey, we're not going to work on the keepers today. You have to do your thing. So it's sometimes difficult. And then, like, for that, do you guys, I mean, from the first team down, do you guys have the comprehensive stuff where you guys are all working in unison? Like, obviously, hey, this team has a deep threat, target number 9, like Zlatan or something like that. We need to work on that. And then how's the goalkeeper going to be off their line? Things like that. Do you guys have like a...
They don't have to worry about Zlatan anymore.
I know.
Yeah, it's important because, yeah, you're going to do video analysis, which is great, but to be able to experience that situation in the video on the field is a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And that's going to stay with you more. So when we get to like that 11v11 scenario or phase of play or conditioned games, the keepers need exposure to that complex situation, because the first part that we do is simple. Then we get into situational. Obviously, it gets a little more complex. But now, 11v11 is even more complex. So how much exposure are those keepers getting in that most realistic game
For
environment.
sure, yeah.
Because it's the repetition that they're going to get that's going to allow them to make successful decisions.
Yeah.
Because they're experiencing it.
Got you.
Yeah.
So.
I was just hoping Jeremy Proud from Red Bull was just walking down the stairs. I was just hoping you were going to give away some secrets as he was walking down right there, and he was just going to sit there and just like, hold on, what are they doing at United Academy? Start taking some notes there so we know.
Let me ask a question. We have obviously goalkeepers that listen, but like goalkeeper coaches, do you have any advice? I'm asking a selfish question, but do you have any advice for goalkeeper coaches who sometimes the sessions don't go well? Because I know we've all had those sessions where you have it written out, you kind of have it scripted of how you want it to be done, and then you kind of allot certain time where you say, hey, this may not go as planned just because it's kind of one-touch finishing, and we're asking our goalkeepers to do shots from distance. So have you ever had that, and how have you as a coach bounced back from that?
Yeah, the biggest trait I would say is you have to be adaptive. So you have theory, paper, and then you have reality. So you have to be able to be adaptive. Don't take it personally. The only way we can get better is by going through the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So and then with that, I think communication is important. So those sessions that might not go well, you can go and look to get feedback, whether it's from the goalkeepers. I think that's powerful because they're in that scenario. Okay. So I think for me, two things that are important is adaptability and communication.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I would say, for layman's terms, the adaptability is if you notice in the session that it may not be going as planned, be quick to kind of adjust the session and kind of make it a little bit more.
Correct. Because, there's, same thing when you play 11v11 game, you've had a strategy for the game, for the tactics, but even as a goalkeeper or field player, can you be adaptive within the situation in the game? Sometimes we become too rigid that it doesn't allow room to be flexible. So it just takes time to adapt it. Keepers will improve. It might not be perfect for that scenario. You just got to look at it bigger term, and it's an incremental process as opposed to focusing in on that one session.
Jack, I want to talk to you about
Thank you, sir. That was awesome. Yeah.
That was amazing. I just want to talk about the collaboration within the academy structure, because it sounds like you guys are very much in unison in regards to how much communication is between you and the team coaches consistently every day, daily?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's from the first team to Loudon, just because we have to shuffle the keepers up and down. Sometimes Loudon keepers will move up, and then we'll have to push academy keepers up. So it's great. So between myself, Juan Pablo Begazzo, and Zach Thornton, we would meet once a week. And it's just great to have that communication, because Zach Thornton from the first team will have his perspective. Juan Pablo Begazzo, great guy, played internationally in Peru. So he has a ton of professional experience from a really, really young age in South America. So he has a knowledge base, and then I'll bring in my strength into it. So that communication is definitely huge.
I want to talk about the fact that a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, they go like, oh, this is really cool when you talk to all these academy coaches, but I work at a youth club and I've got 35 teams at my club or 40 teams at my club. How am I supposed to talk to all these team coaches and be on the same page with them? It's almost impossible. And I always say that there's, if you really want to make it happen, there's a way. It's just convincing them. So what advice do you give to youth coaches who work at big clubs, to work with all these different team coaches and still know what their goalkeepers need, so that, because a lot of times goalkeeper coaches at youth clubs are working on an island where their team is working on something specific, and then the goalkeeper coach goes and trains them, and they had no idea that's the team coach wanted them to work on something else because there's no communication.
Yeah, I hear you. I fear for those guys, because it's tough to be, the one goalkeeper coach training, 12, 13, 14, 15 goalkeepers in a club. But even if it's incremental exposure, so you may focus on one keeper and have a dialogue with that head coach. And, even at the pro and academy level, you don't have that collaboration, for various reasons. But whether it's, maybe you can't meet in person, but can we use electronic messaging and, hey, what does it? And I think the biggest thing is to express your need to the head coach, because a lot of time the head coach, the last thing he's thinking about is the goalkeeper.
So if you don't bring it up to them, they're not going to think about you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So a lot of time, and you may sometimes you don't collaborate, which is the reality, but other times it's a matter of saying, hey, this is what I need for this session, and it's just putting it to their attention. Can we get this scenario out and the head coach may just manipulate one or two things just so you can get what you need from your session from the goalkeeper standpoint.
I love that. I never thought about that. I'm so selfish and involved in my own world that I just assume the team coach knows what my needs are too. And that they're a lot of times, you're right. It's probably not that they're neglecting the goalkeeper. It's just that they're not the first thing on their mind.
For sure, yeah. And I think us as goalkeepers, and I think it's like the reason why we love to watch games and the reason why we like to be like dissecting not just our own like goalkeepers and what they're doing, but especially like the professional game, because we see the traits, or we see like the what's the word I'm looking for? The stuff that happens constantly. Mike, give me a word for synonym for that.
Something that happens constantly.
Yeah. The trends. So the trends that you see in the professional game, we call it even the Cal State LA. It's called.
Should I edit that or keep that in?
You can keep that in.
Okay.
You call it the 91, which is like where 90% of the goals are being scored from. It's those cutbacks, and then the ball's like probably from the 18 and in. So it's like those things you start noticing that in a general session, those are the things you want to work on with your goalkeepers.
Right.
And from there, then they can take those traits and those little habits that they're building and forming, take them to the game. And you can kind of have those conversations with the coach, but it's not realistic because some coaches are doing their own thing and they're not paid enough to really care, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you do those general stuff, which I know most of us coaches do, is kind of like sometimes be comfortable with the uncomfortable sessions where it's like, hey, we're going to do cutbacks, 1v1, one-touch finishing. Do your best to get your footwork all the way across and just get big and stay compact and attack the ball if you need to, but make sure you're getting something out of it. And that's what I used to do at Galaxy when I was there with my goalkeeper coach. I remember telling him probably like almost every week, hey, coach, like when we did this stuff in training, I felt it when I did it in the game, and I knew exactly what to do. And I just felt like that controlled environment with the idea of like, what are we getting out of this? Taking it to like the weekend games, I just felt it was beneficial because I felt like it was second nature to me, and I had already seen those moments happen in training. So,
yeah. I want to talk about DC United. And, obviously DC United has a history of having a great, development system, academy system. I think it was one of the first MLS teams to really develop a solid youth academy, kind of a trailblazer in that regard. Obviously, Bill Hamid came through the DC United Academy, who I think pretty sure most of our fans are familiar with that guy. Probably heard of him before. What resources does DC United give you to help you create the proper environment, and that you would suggest other coaches kind of look into?
Yeah. So again, just reaching out to the experts. So I think you again, if you look at it comprehensively, it's not just technical and tactical. You have to look beyond that. So one, there's a whole strength and conditioning component. There's also the psychological component. Now, and some, youth clubs, you might not have those resources. So then I think it's the responsibility of, goalkeeper coach, goalkeeper trainer to reach out to those experts, try to get the knowledge and try to make as comprehensive of a setup as possible. So the biggest thing at DC United is because you have that collaboration from the first team to the academy, you're getting academy and field players in a professional environment. Because we spoke about the objective is to win games, but one of the things an academy kid's going to struggle with at the next level is going to be the speed of the game. The only way they can get there is by being exposed to it and being in that environment.
That's a really good point, because I think one of the some things that happens with me, I've had in the past with working at youth clubs, is keeping the game realistic, because you've got so many different levels of goalkeepers training at the same time. You're in a fortunate environment where where you've got them all kind of at the reasonable level, and the field players are at the same level. So should goalkeeper coaches do a better job of, even if it's going to maybe you make a little bit of less money, guys, but in the long run it's going to benefit the goalkeepers, maybe smaller sessions, and make sure that, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't put this U12 at this session right now. They're better off being in this other session right now. I want to focus on these kids, that type of a thing. And you club DOCs need to see this too, because I think a lot of times they just see, we'll do a younger session, a middle session, an older session, but there's a big difference between youngers, middles, and olders, and their actual development level of ability too.
Yeah, I think on the overall scheme of things, like one goalkeeper coach per 12 or 16 kids, are you really focusing on the 2 or 3 to develop to the next level, considering that you've got a tactical component, technical, psychological, and the physical, and because each keeper is different and they'll have different needs, you almost kind of want to zoom in and give attention, but the challenge is resources. So a keeper joins in a club, he pays money to join the club, but then there's only goalkeeper training once or twice a week. On top of that, where's the sports psych, where's the strength and conditioning component? So you're not really developing a comprehensive goalkeeper. And over the long run, they're going to have their shortfall.
That's actually a really good point that I want to bring up right now, is that you just mentioned the sports psych thing. Do you feel that goalkeepers out there, if your club doesn't have a sports psychologist, which most youth clubs don't, that they should reach out to a sports psychologist? Do you think it's going to benefit their game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, unless you have a degree, you're not going to be the expert. So we all may have like a certain level of psych to help, but at times it can be a lot deeper than that. So either two things: either that goalkeeper has to go reach out to a sports psych specialist, and apart, from the field, get guidance and learn, and then as a goalkeeper coach, you try to do the best you can. But I would look at the winning behavior. Again, can you balance the development and winning? But as a goalkeeper coach, can you start to monitor, their behavior? Because eventually, once they get older, it is going to be about winning.
Yeah.
No, I think that's everything you're saying is very on point.
Now, I was actually just looking at Omar because I was thinking about is there a sports psych element at the university level, or is that being overlooked?
Yeah, I think it's being overlooked just because the resources. I think a lot of coaches could tell you, yeah, we'd love to have that. Especially us as goalkeeper coaches, I would say, yeah, absolutely, we need that, just because even the goalkeepers that aren't playing, who are being asked to show up every single day to training with no guarantees of them actually playing, like those guys need kind of an outlet, you know what I mean? And then as a coach, it's difficult for me to, like, I repeat it, hey, like, just, you don't know what's going to happen. Just make sure you're mentally engaged, stay engaged. I know that these sessions may sometimes be a little bit, bland for you because we're getting Alex ready or as our starting goalkeeper, getting him ready for the game this weekend. But just keep, mentally engaged. And I think that if we had a sports psych, they would do that job for us, and they would have a different and fresh perspective with every session that they come into. And I feel like that would help develop them for the years to come, who those guys may or may not be the starters next year. You never know. So I think that would definitely add another element that we as goalkeeper coaches would definitely appreciate.
So let's talk about that next step now. So now the kids come through the DC United Academy. Maybe they've gone to college for a little bit. Maybe they've just gone homegrown or whatever. Usually the next step is to go to Loudoun, right? To Loudoun
Correct.
United. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that bridge to the first team from Loudoun, and how do you help as an academy director help facilitate that bridge from Loudoun to the first team and help get them there?
Yeah. So the first the first thing to look at is getting them to that environment, how much exposure, because there's nothing like a pro hitting a ball and then an academy head striking a ball. So their reaction time, with their eyes start to adapt, or even reading the flight of the ball. So just the presence of being in that environment, okay, will allow them to adapt. Okay, so that's huge. Then on top of that, I'll do video analysis, because the challenge they'll have is trying to get games with the USL team, like 11v11 games. So some of them will have to drop down to the academy to get games. because there'll be times where we have Earl dropping down from the first team to get game